And Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? And Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. Now, that's a pretty great Bible verse. And actually, to start out, I want to ask you a question. Now, you probably have thought about this question before, whether you realize it or not. And you probably, since you're sitting here in church, could probably come up with a pretty good answer. But I'm here to tell you that even that answer is not complete. So, this is the question. Go to our first slide, please. Next one. There you go. How do you get in heaven? Now, like the first service, someone goes, we believe in Jesus. Yes, that's true. Because you're in church. You should know that. Good for you. But what I'm talking about is, go ask a neighbor or a friend or someone at work, someone in the grocery store, or just have a conversation with someone. When it comes to it, how do you think you get in heaven? All right? Let's go to our next slide. This is the part you probably never thought of, regardless of the answer. It's true. You have to die. Everyone likes to come up with something fluffy. Oh, yeah, that sounds great. But the one thing that will happen first for all of us, regardless of what you believe, is you have to die. You have to die first. And I heard once, I don't remember which one of the comedians said, he said, well, that's the thing about death that runs in my family. 100% of us are going to die. We must pass over this threshold that we cannot come back from. Mortality is called the great equalizer. No matter how tough, how much you work out, how much money you have, how much fame you can be known all around the world. Queen of England, Donald Trump. Every one of them will die. Their bodies, like ours, will turn to ash. And they will become a memory on this earth. Now, just the thought of that usually brings up quite a bit of anxiety, maybe even some fear, and all that is totally understandable. You can understand that, right? Because now, what actually happens when you die? See, that's the serious question, right? And when you begin to talk to people about what they believe, you get all kinds of different answers. Some of their answers actually sound quite thought out. Some of them don't. Some of them just they just made it up on the spot, maybe. And regardless of their answer, when you really start to probe further and ask them more questions, well, where did you get this? Who taught you this? Is there any proof? Why do you think that? You start heading off in all these weird directions, and usually what happens is the person gets more uncomfortable. In fact, the less certain we become, the more evidence we try to put out there, because the truth is, we don't know. Unless each one of us can go across that threshold and come back and write everything down, how do you know? If you were to ask somebody about heaven and who gets into heaven, what do you think the most common answer would be? Just say, how do you get into heaven? Most people, not here, the average person out there in the world would say this. Next slide. Well, good people, right? Good people go to heaven. If bad people got there, it wouldn't be very much of a heaven, right? Why even have a heaven? Good people should be rewarded somehow. That's why they get to go to heaven. Duh, you should know this. Right? And then, what about religion, though? Because religion, it teaches you what's good. And all religions have some version of what's good, have their own idea. But can that help you? Pick a religion. Can that religion help you be good enough? Pick any religion. I have some people say, well, yeah, sure, of course. But I say, well, how do you know your version is the right one? There's a lot of them out there. Somebody's got to be wrong. In fact, statistically, only one of them can be right, which means all the others are wrong. How are you that sure that it's you? You're willing to bet your entire eternity on that one. And here's the other thing. Just because you don't believe in God, what if you're a complete atheist? Can they still be good? Good enough to get in heaven? Depends on who you ask. Right? It's even a little more complicated. It's just because you're religious or go to church does not mean you're necessarily a good person, right? your definition on actually what is good, it really depends on the situation you're in, the time period. Because stuff that they thought was good and okay 500 years ago, there's no way it's okay. Take slavery. Depending on who you ask, 500 years ago, 300 years ago. Yeah, it's in the Bible. You can own another person. But we know that that's not the case. The same way with different denominations, religions. Depending on what they call good or evil, depends on their situation and what their fears are, what their problems are right then. Just think about taking another life. Generally, we would say, well, that's not good, right? That would count against you. But what if, let's talk about ISIS right now. It's in the Middle East, right? All the awful stuff they're doing. Someone taught them that they're doing is good. They were actually told that. They were taught that that's good. So what if a Christian went over there and killed a couple ISIS people? With the intention, with the idea, the thinking is, well, then they can't kill more people, so that's good. You can actually make that connection, kind of, right? You're preventing evil. But how do you know that that actually counts? See, it gets really uncomfortable the more you really start to delve into it, because your idea of good and when is it going to count? And then I met some people, yes, that would be good. How do you know? Well, because the Bible does not tell you to go kill another person. Let's go to our next slide. Make it a little more uncomfortable. Why would God let you into heaven? You. You're in church, good. But think about this. Why? We're talking about other people. You, as a why would He let you in? And then here's what I would ask. This is what I always do. I love a good discussion. By what criteria are you judging it? Where did you get that? Show it to me. You're pretty silent all of a sudden. How do you know? You can ask that of any religion. Well, how do you know? And trust me, that does not usually lighten up the conversation at all. Let's go a little further. Even more of a conversation killer. Next slide. Who's going to hell? And why? I mean, obviously, let's everybody here believe there's a heaven, right? Even people who don't necessarily can't nail down religion believe there's a good place where people go when they die. Well, then there should also be a bad place, right? And who goes? And I mean, seriously, come up with something in your head. Who goes there? And why? Bad people, right? Bad people. Again, what kind of a God would there be if He let a mass murderer into heaven? Kind of a problem up there, just like they was down here, maybe. Also, if God went to the trouble of making a hell, you'd think He'd be smart enough to know that at least a couple people are going there. Otherwise, why go through all that trouble? So somebody is going. The question is who? And why? When I ask people that, every once in a while someone says, well, Jeffrey Dahmer, mass murderers, they think they got me, right? No, I'm not asking about the easy low-hanging fruit. I could have done that on my own. I'm talking about the guy, let's say getting into heaven, the score is 70. I'm talking about the guy who got a 67. Somewhere in there is a grading scale, whether you know what I mean? Something in there, like let's say this is the line. Just don't take it. These are the people going to heaven, these are not. Here's the line. Who's going to hell? I mean, look at these people. Look how close they are. You guys, you got a lot of work to do. Look how close these people are. What would it be like to get there, stand before God, and realize you got a 67 or 69, and passing is 70? Right? Are you that much different than the one who got a 71? See, it's uncomfortable, really, when you really... That's why I love a good discussion about who goes to heaven. Someone says, well, if you're good, how good? 69 good? Yeah. Well, what if it's 60? What if 70? What if 80? Well, I don't know. You should figure this stuff out. It sounds kind of important to me. And remember, good people go to heaven, bad don't. Because if God let bad people in, He's not a very good God. I can see that, and I'm not a God. I wouldn't do it like that. Even if you didn't like the rules, I'd have them black and white so you knew, right? We talked about Muslim terrorists right now. Remember, somebody told them they're doing a good job. Someone told them that. But even within Christianity in the 1400s and 1500s, the Christian church wasn't all that good. Around that time, there were some Christian people who started to read the Bible, and they realized that even though they had been baptized as an infant, Jesus and the disciples were baptizing adults. And the adult would come forward and say, I want to be baptized. I want to become new. I want to be all this. So they said, I want to do that. So they got rebaptized as an adult. They took a public profession of faith. I believe in Jesus Christ. I want to be washed new. Baptize me again. That doesn't sound that bad, right? Guess what the established church thought of that time? You want water? You're going to get water. They drowned them for it. Both sides thought they were doing good. The church thought they were keeping order in place. We need to stop this. This is a good thing. We need to stop this. Again, good is actually a really bad word sometimes. What's so sad is Jesus lived 2,000 years ago. They already have the same documents we had. It's been 1,500 years out from Jesus, and they're drowning people for wanting to be baptized a second time, to make that choice. You'd think we'd be farther along in this, right? This whole idea of what gets in this into heaven and how good they have to be. Let me give you an example. This is real. Let's say I told you, I'm not the judge, I'm just telling you, I'm the messenger here. You need to build a house. In order to get to heaven, you have to build a good house. Doesn't sound that hard, right? A good house. Here's the rest of it. You don't get any blueprints, no measurements, no idea of who's going to judge it or how. You don't know if it's going to be a Florida house near the water, or if it's going to be a prairie house in the Midwest, or something up in Alaska. And you don't have any idea what the budget is. So you don't know if it needs to be a 3-bedroom house or a 5-bedroom house. And I can tell you, if you try to build a 5-bedroom house on a 3-bedroom budget, you are not going to have a good house. So start building. Go. How's that feel? Because remember, if it's not a good house, you're not getting in. The reason I bring that up is this is the reality of the whole good people go to heaven kind of thing. How's that feel? How do you know? By what standard? And what if the judge said, okay, it has to be a 70. You get a 70 rating on your house, you're getting in. And you built a 68. You had no idea. I never even saw a picture of a 68 house versus a 70 house. How am I supposed to know? Good people go to heaven. Let's go back to religion and faith. What if the cutoff to get to heaven was a 70? And you're at a 68 or 69? What else you got to do quick to get up there? What if you're 90 years old, lived your whole life? You're pretty good. And on your deathbed, you learn that you got a 69. Your time is up. Or worse yet, what if you're 17, you have a child, son or daughter, who's a good kid at 17. They go to volunteering, they go to church, they really care, they get all this. And they're at a 69 already at 17. And the next day a drunk driver kills them. They didn't have a 70. This whole idea of good, when you really start to get onto it, makes you very, very uncomfortable. Again, whoever God set that up is an awful God. It's not worth my time. Why? It's not fair. You know what the guidelines are. So while it seems good, it seems to make sense, it actually makes less sense the farther you get into it. So you think, okay, well, we're Christians, maybe God gave us some laws that we can judge by how good we are. Right? There's got to be something. Well, the Old Testament's actually full of laws. There's 613 Jewish laws. But as Christians, just like the first 10. So let's look at the first 10, the 10 Commandments, right? Next slide. There you go. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make idols. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath, keep it holy. Honor your father and mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You don't steal. Don't bear false witness. That means don't lie. And don't covet. What's a passing score there? We've had these suckers for a long time, right? How many of you have been going to church for decades? You don't have to tell me just how many decades. You've been going for decades. What's the passing score? Is it 8 of 10? 9 of 10? Or is it got to be all 10 of them? And what if you do like a really good job and you get like an 80%? And the other one you do kind of good, so they're going to give you an 85, right? You don't break it all the time sometimes, but sometimes you do good on it. 85. What if God says, no, it's 90%? If it's 90%, you're going to hell just like the guy who only got a 30. Who's not trying very hard at all. Right? How fair does that feel? In fact, if I got to the end, close to the end, I knew I had some time left and I wasn't going to pass, hell's hell. Why keep fighting it? Why keep trying? You're not going anyway. And it sounds funny, but think about it. You're not getting in. Why even continue? You're not good enough. You're not going to be good enough. Like some people say, being a 30 is probably a heck of a lot more fun than working, Okay, well, let's go a little further. Okay, if it's not the 10 Commandments, maybe is there anything else in the New Testament that we can judge ourselves by? And actually there is. There's something called the Jerusalem Council. If you've not read it, it's in Acts chapter 15. Go home and read it tonight. Google it. Just Jerusalem Council. Around the year 50 A.D., as the church started to expand, the disciples and the early believers started to convert other people. And contrary to what your denomination or what you believe, Jesus and the disciples were Jews. They were Jews in Jerusalem. I like to say that because I continually have people who are surprised, who are friends or whatever, Catholics or whatever. No, Jesus was a good Catholic. No. I can assure you, all of them are Jews. And in the early church, we're all Jews in Jerusalem. And as the church grew, they started to go outside of Jerusalem, go farther and farther, and they converted more people. And early on, all the Jews knew the Jewish law, so it wasn't a big deal. But in the year 50, when the church got big enough and far enough out, you had a lot of non-Jews coming in, and they're going, what are all these laws? Do I have to hold them? How good do I have to be? The same thing. You got 613 laws. How many of them do we got to keep to be good? So they debated this. So there's nothing wrong, because we debate this stuff too. So the disciples actually started to ask themselves, okay, what do we do? And some of the disciples say, yes, they have to do all of them, including being circumcised. Other one says, no, you don't have to. Can you imagine converting someone into Christianity and telling him a requirement for being a good Christian is all the males have to be circumcised? That's a tough sell, along with everything else. So eventually they came down to there's just 4 rules. 4 rules. This is all you have to follow. I don't even call them laws, just guidelines. Let's look at that. Jerusalem Council, 50 AD. Abstain from food sacrificed to idols. Abstain from blood, from the meat of strangled animals, and abstain from sexual immorality. We totally got the better end of the deal because Jews have 613. They didn't even make us hold to those other 10. Just 4. They wrote a letter out to the other churches and said, you will do well to follow these. So what's the passing grade on these? Here's the question, how many of you knew these were there? Have you been going to church for decades and didn't know that? Welcome to modern day Christianity. The quality of knowing the Bible. It's true. Most churches don't talk about this anymore. But it's there. This is what the disciples said non-Jews should do 2,000 years ago. So what's the passing grade? There's only 4. Let's say God says you don't have to be absolutely perfect every time. Maybe it's just 3. Which 3? Because I went through this myself. Okay, abstain from food sacrificed to idols. I probably knocked that one out without trying. So I lived in Illinois, then down here. I cannot imagine in there I would have even unknowingly ate food that someone actually dedicated to a foreign god, an idol, or some, and then went out and put it on my plate and ate it. You know what I mean? Not like it. Abstained from blood. I haven't knowingly ate blood or drank blood. But being of German descent, my dad reminded me, growing up, we did have blood sausage. So I probably did not pass that one. Abstain from the meat of strangled animals. I don't knowingly eat that. The reason that is there is because if you eat meat, they don't want the animal to suffer. So you slit his throat, you do it quickly, and he bleeds out. So I thought, well, I can't imagine. But then I thought, you know what? I eat a lot of hamburgers, a lot of steak, hot dogs, all kinds of stuff. Can I be absolutely sure one of those animals in the slaughterhouse was never strangled or... Oh gosh, no, I guess not. How do I know? Because I've already got one down. If I don't get this one, that's 50%. I can guarantee it's probably not good, right? Even if I didn't knowingly do it. Because if you were God, what would you do? What would you say? I would say, you had these 4 things for 2,000 years. Most of you here didn't even know them. Yes, I'm holding you to that. How fair would that be? That's tough. This is why this whole idea of good people go to heaven is a really bad thing. It makes no sense. It's unfair. It doesn't get you closer to the truth. If you really, really start to look at things, well, you lose faith in just about everything, right? So here's the question. Well, does the Bible actually, we're church, and most of you thinking, come on, Pastor, get to it. You're kind of bumming me out. Let's move. Right? Does the Bible actually tell us what to do? Yes. Absolutely. It's not vague. It's very clear. But first we have to establish something first. There are no good people. Let's go to our next slide. Romans 3:10, there is no one righteous, not even one. Romans 3:12, there is no one who does good, not even one. 3:23, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So we just shattered the first big problem, and we think good people go to heaven. There are no good people. Makes it very simple. Anybody here good? No. Anybody here good enough to get into heaven? No. Nobody's getting in. When I read this, growing up, I thought, what do you mean nobody's good? I have 2 grandmas that were fantastic. Growing up, they were like, and everything. How can they not be good? I had trouble with that. God is saying no one is good enough. Doesn't matter who they are. No one earns their way in. Let's go to our next slide, because this will start to shed some light on it. Romans 3:20, therefore no one will be declared righteous in God's sight by the works of the law. Rather, through the law, what? We become conscious of sin. Oh, we're using the law to try to figure out how good we are. When in actuality, the law is supposed to tell us we're not good. That's the whole point. The law is there to tell you that you've already received a failing grade. To do anything other than that is foolish. And it's untrue. You will never receive a passing grade. And this, interestingly enough, is where Christianity takes a hard right turn from all other religions. Because all other religions do have some area in there. If you're good enough, you'll get there. Make some friends that are Muslim. Great people. And I've asked them, well, yeah, you have to be good and get to heaven. How good? Good. How much sugar do I put in the cookies? Oh, just put good sugar. No, how much? How good? There's no objective means that's truly fair or makes sense. Again, think about it. How awful would that be to get to heaven and find out you got a 69 when the entrance number is 70? So thankfully, the Bible tells us very specifically, first, we are not good enough. You receive a failing grade. Big F for everybody, including myself. But it also tells us how you do get into heaven. Because there is a way. Let's go to our next slide. It's not vague. If you declare with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, be saved. Because it's not about you. You can't do this on your own. And here's what's so awesome. Next Bible verse. Why did God do this? Because he loved the world so much that he gave his son. That whoever believes in him will not perish. God did not send his son into the world to condemn it, but so the world would be saved through him. What Jesus did for us is an amazing, wonderful, incredible gift we will barely ever comprehend, but we don't deserve it. We all have a failing grade, but we have a chance to get to heaven, to be with God forever because of him. I've said this in many other sermons, and a lot of times when I talk to people, and I love a good religious discussion, I always try to bring it to one question, and that is, what is it that you believe? What do you actually, you can tell me what you think. In a way, I care what you think, in a way I don't. What is it that you believe? Well, I believe when I go to this church, this is my denomination. No. What is it that you believe? Well, I rarely miss church ever. I always put money in the offering plate. You're not answering my question. I was born a Catholic. You're not answering my question. I was born Lutheran. What do you believe? If you believe, if you believe in Jesus Christ, that he's your Savior, if you say that with your mouth, if you believe that in your heart, you're saved. If your denomination, Lutheran, Catholic, Methodist, Baptist, what teaches that Jesus Christ is the only way, that is a good denomination. Be a wonderful Catholic, be a wonderful Methodist. Jesus Christ alone is the way. The church doesn't save you, he does. It's through faith in him. You know, eventually I still get questions, well, what about the laws? What am I supposed to do? If you love Jesus Christ, if he is your Savior, you will want to do the right thing. You will want to take care of those that are less fortunate. You'll want to share. You'll want to tell people about him in some way. But even then, Jesus made it very easy for us. He said, of all the commandments, take all of them. There's 2 laws. And if you follow these, you'll be doing everything right. He said, love God with all your heart. Just love God. And then 2, love your neighbor as yourself. If you do those 2 things, you are satisfying the heart of the law. Now, in a few minutes, we're going to take communion together. The reason Jesus gave us communion is that so that we would never forget him. He actually said, do this to remember me, to remember everything I've said, everything I did, to know that I am with you and I will always be with you. So if Jesus Christ is your Savior, if you do believe in him, this communion is for you. It's not from me, it's from him to you. To let you know that he has never left and he never will